We're going to dig in to the NFL draft with our gurus, Howard Balzer, Marc Lillibridge. We've had them on several times. And, before we get into all the, before we really dig into this thing, I'll start with you, H. What does the draft mean to you? I mean, you've been covering this thing for ages now.
It's kind of like a holiday in a lot of ways, and you look forward to it every year. And you are aging me, but there's no question. I've been going at it a long time. In fact, this is the 40th anniversary of ESPN's first telecast, which I was honored to be a part of back in 1980, and then did it with them for about 9 years, and it was always an honor of being involved with them, but especially to be on that first one. And there's been some retrospective stories written this year, and going back to how bare bones it was technologically and with the sets and all those things. So it's kind of like your once a year day that you look forward to, just like all fans, and the way it's grown over the years. And it's going to be interesting this year with there not being much, obviously, anything else going on in sports, to just see what that audience is going to be like, because fans obviously look forward to it. I mean, I don't know, Bridge, have you lost track of how many mock drafts there have been? I mean, gosh, that would be funny if someone would actually add them up, how many mock drafts there are. But it's just the way this thing is covered now, and it's gotten so huge.
Well, as someone who's done a mock draft, the only one I care about is mine. So, I'm not counting anybody else's H. I mean, I'll leave that to you guys, the experts. But here's what I think about this. And H is, a historical icon when it comes to the draft. And they did a nice article about him this week. And I'm sure you can go to his Twitter page and read it, because he retweeted it about 40, 50 times because he looks so much better. He looks so much better then than he does now. But and I'm not knocking him. I mean, he was phenomenal. But it's cool for me because I've been able to work with H for so long, to have a guy that started this process. And this is something that I went through, something I watched the year 95 that I was going through the draft. Didn't get drafted, but still it's been fun. But it's something I've watched every year, been a part of it from front offices. And I think this year will be the most unique. Well, number one, because it's done remotely. But number two, because it's the only thing, this is literally what anybody's talking about. Nobody's talking about hockey. Nobody's talking about Major League Baseball. Nobody's talking about the NBA playoffs right now. This is the only game in town, and I think it's so it's become so global, but it's also such a distraction from people that aren't really true football fans. People are going to be watching this tonight and gaining. The NFL is going to gain so many more fans, because what this does, and I think where this is unique compared to any other sport, this is the best draft, and because college football is so huge. There's none of that going on, right? These college fans have missed all their spring games. So now those fans, the Alabama fans, LSU fans, the TCU fans, the Oregon fans, they're all going to be tuning in this weekend to see where the guys they grew up for the last 3 or 4 years cheering, where do they go? And are they going to root for that pro team? So I think this adds just another dimension and dynamic to it. And I think this will probably end up being the highest rated NFL draft coverage of all time. And I think it's bringing those casual fans, people that I know that aren't real big football fans, have been hitting me up, asking me who are the Vikings taking, who are the Browns taking. It makes me understand this is going to be a really different draft, and it's fun to be a part of it.
So 1995, when you were going through the process, I'm curious, H, do you have a file on Bridge? What was your report on Bridge? What did you see? Good blocking technique, could really get after it, plug the gaps.
Sweet mullet.
Yeah, he's able to shed blocks, and I know Bridge has somewhere in boxes somewhere, he has scouting reports that he wrote on players when he was involved in personnel. And I don't know, Bridge, have you ever checked with any other teams to see if they what their reports are, or what?
Here's the best one. So, because they don't want to hurt my feelings, when I got into Green Bay, they redacted my reports, and in Kansas City too, because it was funny. Reggie McKenzie was the guy that hired me, of course. Now, former Raiders GM, and then now with the Miami Dolphins. It was funny. Years later, after I've been working there, I was like, "Hey, can I ever see my report?" And he's like, "It's not good." And I'm like, it's fine. And that's fine. And you know what? But I still got there and I still made it. I had a guy, Dan Shanka, who does ourlads.com, and he was from my hometown. He able to work me out. We weren't good. I didn't win a game my senior year. We were 0-10-1, one of the worst teams in Iowa State history. And when I played out of position, I was playing DN when I should have been playing linebacker. But, all I needed was a shot, like those guys say. And I ended up going to Philadelphia, and then that led me to Buffalo, to Miami, and, ultimately New Orleans. But, I was there, and I lived my dream. And I didn't get to go through the combine process. I didn't get to go through the draft process, but I was there. I was watching the TV. I remember when, teams started calling me in the 7th round. I thought I might have a shot of getting drafted in the 7th round because I tested really well. And, but it didn't happen. But, guys got different plans. But it's pretty cool. And I would probably call myself as a talent evaluator. I probably would have rejected myself. But so as an evaluator, I'm more cognizant of that, and I pay attention to that because there's a lot of times there's a lot of really, really good players, and H can attest to this, that are, they look like Tarzan, but they play like Jane. And there's something to be said about heart. And that's why a guy like AJ Epinesa, I think, is going to be – he's not getting the hype that, Young or some of these other better defensive ends are, but he's going to play in the NFL for 10, 15 years, and that's what I like.
And the thing is, I'll tell you, when you look at NFL rosters right now, there's a ton of play. Well, I don't know, a ton. There's a lot of players who entered the league undrafted, and so that's a big part of the evaluation that teams have, and who are the priority free agents that teams are going to go after. And I know I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but this is going to be an interesting aspect of this draft process, because Bridge just mentioned how he didn't go to the combine. Every year, there's about a quarter of the players selected in the 7 rounds did not go to the combine. I'm wondering this year if there's going to be that many, because with everything hasn't happened in the last 6 weeks, medicals are up in the air on a lot of players. The undrafted free agents that are going to be signed, you haven't. A lot of times guys will, teams will go to a pro day and they're going there to watch the quarterback or a high rated receiver or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's someone else there that kind of jumps out at them and it gets a player on their radar that wasn't at the combine. And that's how some of these guys get a little bit more notice than they were. And then teams go back and look at them and they become priority free agents or late round picks. I'm not sure we're going to have as much of that this year because it isn't, complete evaluations on a lot of players. And so, and then of course, all these rookies are not going to have the advantage or just have, being able to take part in all the rookie orientation and the OTAs and the mini camps, because they're not going to happen. And so that's going to really, assuming the season does play, that's going to have a big impact on what rosters look like. So, but it'll be interesting in terms of the draft itself. Will there be as many non-combine guys selected because of have in their minds that they weren't able to have answered?
Agree.
Like Tua, for example, today it's coming out. It's a top headline that the Dolphins finally give him a pass, a medical pass. When else would a team that is selecting in the top 5 come out the day of the draft and pass a medical grade of, what's expected to be the second quarterback taken? Like, wouldn't that have happened weeks ago?
I'll speak on this one. I think it did. I mean, I think this is all bluster. I think it's all smoke. This is the last couple of days. I mean, you saw a rumor yesterday or 2 days ago that the Dolphins were going to trade up from 5 to 3 to get a tackle. Why? There's 4 stud tackles in this draft, and maybe 6 if you want to go deep, that you could get without having to give up any of your resources. So again, I think a lot of that's bluster. I think a lot of it is, where this information comes from is people saying, hey, you know what? Because the rumors out there that they like Herbert better, right? And that they're saying, okay, well, now we're giving 2 of the pass. I would guarantee. I mean, these guys are billionaires, owners, and in the franchise are worth so much money. They knew this beforehand. This is just something else to put out there to maybe say, okay, hey, well, now at 5, if you want to maybe trade up with us to go get to him because maybe they want Herbert. Maybe they can get through like they can get him at 7 or 8 or 9 or Love or something like that. So I think all this stuff is just smoke and mirrors. H, what do you think?
No, absolutely. And you said we never know where these stories emanate from. Who has the agenda? Is it another team that puts it out there? Is it an agent? It could be any one of those things. And it's so much of it is just smokescreen. Now, the thing is, sometimes some of it might be true, but there's no way of truly knowing. But that's the game that is played at this time of the year. But it also leads to all the things that occur in the draft that we say, oh my God, I'm so surprised. I'm so shocked at this happening. Well, it's like that every year. I don't know why anybody is surprised or shocked anymore. But I'll say this, and I use this example all the time. 3 years ago, we were sitting here on the day of the draft talking, and I said to you, well, in the first round, the Bears are going to trade up one spot to get Mitchell Trubisky, and then the Chiefs are going to trade up 17 spots to get Patrick Mahomes, and then the Texans are going to trade up 13 spots to get Deshaun Watson. You'd have been sending some medical people to my house to drug test me. But all those things happen. And so that's what really makes this all fun, because it's like the old Jim Mora quote, the old coach of the Saints. His famous quote was, playoffs? We just want to win a game. Well, his best quote was when he said to reporters, well, you know what? Some of you guys think you know, but you don't know. And that's true of a lot of this. You know, we have as much information as we can. We guess, and we have mock drafts and all that, but none of us, and nobody truly knows what any team's draft board actually looks like.
When you guys think back on all the drafts, is there an iconic moment that stands out in terms of like the best bluff or biggest smokescreen you can recall?
Ooh, that's a good.
Well, I'll say, I mean, I go to recent memory. I mean, we literally sat up to the day before the draft, and maybe even the day of the draft. Nobody thought Baker Mayfield was going number 1. I mean, so many people had the Browns taken, because at that point they had number 1 and number 4, which of course they took Denzel Ward, the safety, but nobody thought Baker was going to go. I mean, there were so many other quarterbacks that guys were talking about up until that point, and they did a great job. And again, I think that's what part of this cloak and dagger and this the way it works is. I mean, we just heard the other day there was a story came out that Gettleman and the Giants are doing all their homework and research on the top quarterbacks. And okay, really, Daniel Jones is the guy of the future. You benched your Hall of Fame quarterback Eli for him. You're not going to draft a quarterback at number 3. So I don't understand why that would be a story. But again, that's to stir up to somebody to trade up and say, hey, we're open for business. If you can give us something, these quarterbacks are available. And so, or heck, you know what? Maybe there's a quarterback we saw last year. I mean, Josh Rosen was a first-round pick 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden he gets, shipped off for a guy for Kyler Murray. And so, I mean, maybe there's something there, but it's just to stir up conversation, it's to get things started. But I think that's a good way to do it. I know we did it when I was in Green Bay. We did it when I was in Kansas City. You put out as many rumors, like you'll start talking about like a Jerry Jeudy. All of a sudden you see these teams like, oh, Jerry Jeudy, man, he's got some knee issues. Well, of course, if you're picking 17, 18, 19, you're hoping he slides. You're hoping these teams above him start doing research and digging into it. And they're like, if you can scare away 2 or 3 players, 2 or 3 teams, you're hoping that you can do that. Now, good teams won't get scared, but teams do that all the time. And they did it with Randy Moss. It happened for Warren Sapp. You can go back in history and look at guys that slipped because of rumors or information that was out there that maybe shouldn't have been. Guys, they'll do that. They do that with Wonderlic tests. And I mean, that's why the whole Tua thing, his Wonderlic test he took as a junior, came out was a 13. Well, then he retook it and got it, 19 or 20, but nobody reported that, right? So that was probably from a team that hoped he slipped.
Exactly right. And the Baker Mayfield example is a good one because there were some rumblings that the Browns were going to take him, but yet everyone just chalked it up. No, that's not true. No, there's not.
Well, they thought they were going to take him at 4, maybe. You know what I mean? They thought there would be if they didn't take a quarterback right away, then maybe they would take him at 4 or they would trade out. People thought Denzel Ward or actually people thought that Chubb, the Bradley Chubb would be maybe the defensive end or somebody else that they would take somebody else number 1. And it was great. I thought they played it really well.
Do you think the Jets would have taken Baker?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think he would have had to at that point. I mean, those quarterbacks are also famously lumped together now. I think that somebody would have taken Baker. Baker's he's a dynamic player. When he's on, he just was that was the dumbest thing to make his head coach or his offensive coordinator the head coach. He just wasn't ready. Freddie wasn't ready. I think Baker will have a great bounce back year. I got hammered in the press this week or in this offseason saying I thought a good team would try to trade for Baker Mayfield because of just that he had such a down year off of 2 years ago. And people were ripping me. Oh, we're not trading Baker Mayfield. Browns fans were all over me. I was like, well, you know what? I just think he needs to be coached. He's one of those guys that needs to be coached hard. And I don't think he was last year. And so I was just saying, if you can get a trade value for a guy, and Cleveland could get maybe another with a new staff, they might get somebody else. But I think Baker's a good football player. He just needs to be coached better.
Yeah, tonight the NFL Draft, we've got Howard Balzer and Marc Lillibridge on with us. You guys will both be covering the draft in a multitude of ways and give our listeners a chance to where they can find your guys' work. H?
Well, once again, SI.com. I'll have a live blog at SI.com/NFL/Cardinals. And all of the publishers for the websites will be doing their own live blogs. Of course, on the main site, SI.com, there'll be a lot of content there. I think they're having live blogs there and a lot of videos and all those things. And so it's going to be a great place to go. Obviously, there's a lot of places out there to get your draft info, but SI.com will be a really good place. And so for those people in our area that still have a little bit of an affinity for the Cardinals, that's it's a good place to keep up with them because they're an interesting team right now going forward with getting Kyler Murray last year, trading for DeAndre Hopkins, and with Kingsbury running that offense. They've made some defensive upgrades in the offseason. We'll see what they end up doing with the in the draft, but obviously in a tough division. But I think this team is one that's going to be interesting to watch this season.
Yeah, how could they not? I mean, the Hopkins trade, just mind-boggling how they pulled that off for David Johnson. But I think the Cardinals are going to be a very intriguing team.
Yeah, I do too.
Bridge, the Brawl Network has really just become quite fascinating. You've got a lot of former players on with you, and tonight's going to almost be like a roundtable. It should be pretty cool.
Yeah, we're going live at 6:50 Central Time, and it'll be on. You can find it on Twitter at Network Brawl, or you can always just follow me at Bridges Football to get there. But we're going to be we're going through Periscope on your Twitter feed, and we're going to be giving away prizes. We're going to have contests. We want people to be able to interact. We want people to be able to guess their team's picks before it happens. First one does it, we'll be giving away prizes, all the picks. It's going to be fun. We got some former NFL players that are going to be joining us. We got some guys. Hopefully, Balzer's going to be able to get on. We got some people that covers the local sports. All of our podcasts we have in each market guys are going to jump on and kind of talk about their picks and who they hope, and then after it, we'll do little recaps. So it should be a lot of fun. There's a lot of, as H knows, him and I have done enough of these broadcasts where you need to have some good content to fill. So it'll be fun to get on and hopefully get some questions answered for folks and fans and debate a little bit and let them everybody's going to be celebrating, right? Everybody's draft will be the greatest draft they've ever had tonight. So I'm excited about hearing that.
It is, though, an opportunity for these franchises to make a drastic change. I mean, look at what happened with the Chiefs 3 years ago. It changed their franchise. They bring in an MVP caliber quarterback, and he has demonstrated that in a short turnaround, you can bring a Lombardi trophy to your case if you get a guy of his caliber.
Hey, speaking of which, I want to bring this up, and I know H and I have talked about this multiple times, but did the Chiefs give John Dorsey a Super Bowl ring? I mean, for goodness sake, the guy was the GM, loaded that team. I mean, he loaded that team up, and he had the guts and the Balzers to go out and draft to trade up and draft Mahomes. And I mean, I thought it was a phenomenal move, and it was a gutsy move. Not a lot of other people. I don't know if a lot of other franchises would have done it. He deserves a lot of credit for what that team did, and I don't know if he gets enough of it.
No, I think you're 100% right. And heck, he don't even have a job in the league right now. And so, of course, he was a big part of drafting Baker Mayfield for the Browns. And let's remember, too, when they drafted Patrick Mahomes, they had Alex Smith, who certainly no one's going to compare to Patrick Mahomes, but he's a pretty darn good quarterback. And so, they had him and were winning games with him, but they just saw that that's something special with Patrick Mahomes and made the move. And now we see what he's capable of. But to answer your question directly, Nate, I mean, the draft, it still is the lifeblood for any team. And everybody gets all excited in free agency, and they watch the first week or so when crazy money gets thrown around. But when you really look at it and analyze it, most of the time, free agency doesn't work to the extent that anyone believes that it will. But the draft can. And let's remember, too, you're getting players in the draft. I'm not going to say bargains, because those guys are still making pretty good money, but you're getting players for a much smaller percentage of your cap than you're spending on veterans and guys in free agency. And especially after the first round, when you hit on a second round pick, a third round pick, a fourth round pick, some of those later round picks, and those guys are playing for the minimum salary basically for 4 years, along with an okay bonus, but nothing approaching huge numbers. That's what builds your team. I mean, yeah, you have to have the quarterback, like you said, Nate, but if you don't have all that supporting cast, I mean, football's so unique in the team aspect of it, where you have 46 guys active on game day. Well, virtually, except for maybe the backup quarterback, usually every player active plays at some point in the game. Even if it's 6 snaps on special teams, there's guys in the game. And while they might not make a difference on some of those 6 snaps, they can also make a mistake that blows up a play and could end up leading to a loss, or maybe even helping a win. So that's where that depth and all that is what really leads to winning teams. And that's why the draft remains the lifeblood, and the teams that do this the best are the teams that are usually consistently very competitive.
So you look at, maybe top 5, and Joe Burrow, Chase Young certainly seem to be locks for those top 2. And then from there, it could be utter chaos. It could be as chaotic as their process of the virtualness of the draft. I mean, who knows where it goes from there?
And if it goes that way, which everyone expects it to, Detroit, in some ways, that's where the draft starts, is with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
Number 3, if those 2 picks go the way everyone expects them to. Because will they keep it? Will they trade it? Will someone, like I said, will someone trade up to that spot to get one of the quarterbacks that they like? And that's, that then sets the stage for what happens afterward. And every other team's wondering too, because there's a lot of teams, let's say after the top 5 or 6, that are sitting there that don't need a quarterback, that are hoping both Justin Herbert and Tua go, because then that leaves more players at other positions that are available. But all of a sudden, if both those guys maybe slip a little bit, well, then that means, a Jeff Okudah or an Isaiah Simmons or a Derek Brown or the tackles. That means, those guys will go a little bit earlier if the quarterbacks aren't selected. And that affects what so many other teams after that will do.
Well, I'm a big Jeff Okudah fan. I think I actually wouldn't be – if I was the Redskins, I'd take him over Chase Young. I think he can produce sacks. I like Chase Young. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust. I'm never going to call the guy a bust, but I just don't know if Young is what we think he is. He disappeared in that Clemson game or in the finals game or against Clemson, and that just sat bad with me all off season. I just think that I can manufacture sacks. It's hard for me to find a legit corner, and I think Okudah is that guy. But you know what? It's going to be great. You're right. I think H is right. I think, Burrow is number 1, of course. I think then Chase Young probably is too. And then after that, you're right, H. I think this whole thing, I think it's, the Lions can't miss. Patricia and Quinn are out of jobs. The Giants, I think Gettleman's been playing this like a sly fox he is. He comes off as so naive and so dumb and just plays this shucks role. Man, he is setting people up. I think he is, and he's sitting in the catbird seat. And then where I think the draft gets fun is with that Dolphin spot, right? Because, I mean, do they take a tackle? Do they take a quarterback? Do they take, in my mock, I got him taking Isaiah Simmons. I think he's the most dynamic player in this draft. I think he's got to be with a good defense coordinator, but I think he's an outstanding player. And but that's why I think that's when it's going to get fun. I mean, I think it's going to kind of be a little bit of a lull the first two picks, but I think after like 3, 4, 5, 6, it's going to take off. It's going to be great.
It's a good point. I think one of the keys for the Dolphins is they have three first round picks.
Yep.
And then they're at 18 and then 26, and a lot of it could depend on what do they think of that next tier of quarterback.
Sure.
Be happy with a Jake. Would they be happy with a Jordan Love at one of those picks later in the first round, and then use that number 5 pick to just continue to upgrade that overall roster? And so that could eventually determine what they do. But Tua still is, and you started all this off, Nate. There are teams that have a little, when you're drafting a quarterback, and everyone always says, well, there's risk with every player. Well, sure, there's risk. But when you have a history of a certain amount of injury and you're drafting at that position, you were hoping this guy's going to be your quarterback for a decade, maybe longer. And so if you have in the back of your mind a worry that injuries because of his history will crop up, or could there be residual effect down the road to the hip injury, then maybe you're going to say, okay, we like him. Somebody's going to take him, obviously, but maybe you just don't take him that high. And I think that's what we'll find out. Will the team really take him high? Because I think I'll here's your thought, Bridge. There's a lot of people believe, and I don't disagree with it, that if Tua just plays out the season and this thing doesn't happen with his hip, that he might be the number 1 quarterback in the draft instead of Joe Burrow.
I mean, I think there's a fair case of that. I mean, his accuracy is really good. He's efficient. He's got now, don't get me wrong, he's got 2 first-round receivers he's throwing the ball to. His backs are all really good. He's a great quarterback. I think Tua, I'm not as high on Tua as a lot of other people are. I think just because I think I want a wow factor, and I think Burrow brings a little bit of that. But Jordan Love does. I mean, I think Jordan Love is going to be one of those guys where I think we'll look back and go, man, people should have traded up for him. If you watch him in 18, he was a different player than what he was in 19 with a different staff, a more professional, pro-ready staff. But I think I like Tua, and you're right, H. I think if he does get hurt, I think it goes back to that whole thing, right? Tanking for Tua. That's what the Dolphins were going to do. They actually played better. They made some great moves in free agency. I think the Dolphins are set up to make a really good run in a wide open AFC East. And I love their staff. I love what they did in free agency. This draft's going to be big for them. But again, here's what I think, though. If you're good with this, if you're playing this the right way, and I think Chris Greer, their GM, will, is if you can take the best player at 5, it doesn't have to be a quarterback. Because I think with that ammunition you have at 18 and 26, you could probably package that and get back up, somewhere if you feel that next quarterback, right? Maybe you like Justin Herbert, maybe you like Jordan Love, maybe you like maybe Tua's still there. So I think there's still a way that this whole thing could work out for the Dolphins in the Dolphins' favor if they play it right. And maybe it's one of those things. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's enough juice, but maybe that's one of those situations where they're sitting there at 7 with the Panthers. Maybe the Chargers don't take Tua, or the Chargers are picking at 6. Maybe somehow they package 18 and 26 to move up to 7 and get Tua. Or maybe the Chargers are willing to move to get to. I think there's going to be so many different scenarios that are going to play out tonight. I think it's going to be this will be one of the wildest drafts because there's so many teams too that are multiple picking in this first round. If you're a fan of Texans or the Bills or whatever, you don't have a first round pick, it might not be as fun. But I think there's going to be if you're a Raiders fan or a Dolphins fan or Jaguars fan, you're going to be excited. You got a lot of picks coming.
Do you guys think that the Chiefs pick at 32, or do they move out of that, or where do you think the Chiefs look like right now?
I would say for the Chiefs, I think it just depends on who falls at that position. I mean, the one good thing about the Chiefs is they don't really have any needs. I mean, they're pretty loaded everywhere that they along the defensive front. I mean, they're stacked the quarterback, stacked the tight end. You're really good at receiver. Your corners are good. I just don't know if there's a position that if there's anything that they really have to go out and get. Maybe you want to say some secondary help, and I think there's going to be some corners there. I mean, I think you might be able to get a AJ Terrell from Clemson. You may be able to get a Trayvon Diggs from Alabama. I think there's some quality corners that are going to be there. Maybe if Christian Fulton from LSU falls a little bit, I have him going higher, but I think there's some quality players there. So, but I think that's the one thing I give Leach his credit for is that they built such a good team. I mean, they got to be favored to win the Super Bowl again this year. Anytime you got number 5 coming back, you're loaded. But I think that they're in a position where this might be a spot where if, let's say Jordan Love slips, or maybe there's a team that wants to move up for Jalen Hurts, or maybe there's a team that maybe one of these tackles goes, or one of these receivers, a team wants to move up, that they're sitting in the catbird seat to be able to say, hey, all right, we'll go back and take we'll take a 1 in 2021 or a 2 in 21 and a 2 this year or something like that. I think it could work out pretty good in their favor.
And to that last point, we see picks at the end of the first round somewhat frequently. And when you go back over the last few years, obviously you had Lamar Jackson. The Baltimore traded up with the last pick in the first round. And a few years before that, Minnesota traded up to take Teddy Bridgewater. And so that was
the Broncos traded up to get Paxton Lynch, didn't they?
That's true. Yeah. So when you look at that from that perspective, a team sitting there that maybe is thinking, well, we'd like to get one of these other quarterbacks. We don't know what's going to happen in round 2 when everybody, redoes their board and has the whole day tomorrow to analyze it. And they figure, well, we want to get one of those quarterbacks. Let's make sure we do. And they end up making a deal to get back into the end of that first round, because let's remember too, if you draft a guy in the first round, you get that for his contract, you get that extra option year, the 5th year on his deal. Once you get into the second round, they're all 4-year contracts. So there's a certain amount of advantage. You're not paying as much overall money, but you're getting that potential protection for that extra year if you draft a guy in the first round. So that enters into a lot of the strategy that we see.
Nate, that's the other thing too. There's some teams though. Nate, that's a great point on the contract age. But you got teams. You got to think here: the Steelers, the Colts, the Bears, the Texans, the Bills. They don't have first round picks, and so they might be able to sit and try to work something out to be able to say, hey, we want to be able to package something. There's a guy we really want. We think this guy is a difference maker. I mean, the Bears are sitting there holding picks 43 and 50. Maybe they can sit and say, hey, we'll give both of these up to go get a guy at 32. So that's part of it as well that plays into this. The Colts are sitting there they have the 34th pick and the 44th pick. So maybe just to move up those 2 spots, maybe they're not giving up the 44th, but maybe they say, hey, we'll give you 34 and then we'll give you our 4th rounder, number 122. We'll give you that pick to move up those 2 spots. That's a great way. And then because what Veach is trying to do is he's just trying to build depth. He's just trying to get quality backup guys. There's really no starting spots available. I'm not saying there can't be, but I just think you're building depth, and that's get value, get picks. And the other thing, here's the other thing that not a lot of people are talking about, and I think should be talked about more. If I'm a GM this year, with the caveat that there might not be football or it might be late or whatever else, and there's sometimes this draft class is a little bit these players like H brought up earlier aren't going to be able to get into camps. Like Sean Payton came out and said the Saints are no longer going to do a virtual offseason. It's just not going to work for them. This might be a throwaway year for a lot of these players, for some of these young guys. If I'm a GM, I'm trying to gain capital for 2021. And so if I'm making a trade, I might take lesser this year. Like if I'm in the second round, if I'm at number 32, I might say, oh, you know what? I'll give you that one. Give me a 4th this year, but give me your first round pick next year. And start building up a stockhold of picks for 2021, knowing that if there's not football or redacted season or football or a lesser season of football this year, I think that would be a smart play by some GMs, and that's what I would do if I was running the team.
Guys, I feel like we're on the clock because I'm too cheap to upgrade from the Zoom free plan. So it might kick us off here in a second, but first of all, thank you guys for coming on and doing this. But I guess overall, if you had to go like 1 out of 10 for your concern about the technological flaws that we might see tonight, what are they?
Like 3. There's probably going to be some glitches. Who knows? Maybe something will get hacked, but I just don't think there's going to be anything truly major.
And then we got bumped. But our appreciation for Howard Balzer and Marc Lillibridge for joining us. Great content, and we appreciate their time. Check out, by the way, Howard will be live on si.com/NFL/Cardinals. And Marc Lillibridge, you can find him at thebrawl.com. He'll be live on Periscope with a number of former NFL players tonight breaking down the NFL draft in real time. So our thanks to Howard Balzer and Marc Lillibridge for joining us on JOCK 98.7.